Excellent. So, as I said, we had a travel dilemma with our planned speaker, but Paul Blaschko, literally at 11 o'clock, agreed to step in. I was standing by the tech table, thanking Paul yet again. I will probably do it 1,000 times until he makes me stop. And he said, "That's what I live for." Like, genuinely excited about stepping in 12 hours after the ask. So just extraordinary thanks to Paul. I met Paul a couple of years ago. He was in one of our small conference rooms at the Institute with two colleagues. They were working on a project called Ethics at Work. And I was just trolling the hallways, as I sometimes do. And I heard this individual just laughing and laughing. And I said to myself, I need to insert myself here. What kind of joy is happening in this room? I want to be a part of it. And there was Paul. And joy is one of the ways I always think about Paul. His enthusiasm for what he does is just extraordinary and admirable, and something really I aspire to on many days, and very few do I achieve. So huge appreciation for the kind of person he brings to this community. I would also say one of the things about Paul that I admire is his ability to have an idea. And lots of us have ideas, but he has the ability to bring it into practice, to create a program, an intervention, a piece of scholarship that achieves this abstract, ephemeral idea and brings it to reality. And these are two just super special things about Paul. He's also got a standard bio that wildly he printed out for me. So in the midst of putting together a keynote on the fly, he printed out his own bio. So I'm going to read every word because and that's appreciation for it. So Paul Blaschko is an assistant teaching professor at the University of Notre Dame. He teaches God and the Good Life, a course he co-created dedicated to asking the big questions about meaning, morality, and faith. He also serves as the founding director of the Sheedy Family Program in Economy, Enterprise, and Society. I think this is a really great example of the kind of cross-professional conversation folks were just noting earlier. It is a program devoted to exploring how the humanities can help students find meaning in work and in business. He is co-author of The Good Life Method, a book about how philosophy can help shape us live better lives, and he is currently working on a book entitled Work Life, a philosophical guide, under contract with Princeton University Press. He lives here in South Bend with his wife Shayla and their 5 children. So welcome, Paul. He's a busy man in many ways.
All right. Thank you so much, Suzanne. So as Suzanne and Aaron sort of beckoned down the hallway after our dinner yesterday, I got this terrified feeling because I was trying to steal a dessert in an actual dinner plate for my wife. And I was like, they caught me. I was like, banned from the conference. But no, in fact, it was just this, so that's way better. And it's funny because this is actually the same way that I got my start as the youngest abstinent speaker in South Central Minnesota. I went to a high school rally that my friend was putting on. I think it was called the Good Decisions Rally, because it was right before their prom. And they asked me, hey, they said, can you come and give 5 minutes, because I had done some things for my youth group. They're like, oh yeah, I can give 5 minutes on good decisions, that's great. And then about 2 minutes before I went on stage, they were like, oh, our speaker's not coming. Do you think you could do 90? And I was like, yeah. I did 90 minutes, and I made up incredible stories about good decisions, bad decisions, and everything in between. And then afterwards, the principal came, and she's like, oh, thank you so much. And I was like, oh, I was just on this like high. I was like, oh. And she handed me the check that they were going to give the other guy, and I was like, oh, this is what I do now. I just like went around South Central Minnesota for the next 4 years, telling kids to make good decisions. Great. Oh, and when I told Shayla, my wife, that I was going to do this, she's like, oh, great, so you're going to get the honorarium too? And I was like, you're going to have to take that up with Suzanne. But I couldn't even accept it. I'm a teaching professor, so I've taken a vow of poverty. Okay, all right.
Use that line.
That's everything. All right. I do want to start by saying thank you. This is my favorite conference. Increasingly over the years, I've just gone to fewer and fewer conferences after grad school, kind of early career stuff. And at the beginning, I was kind of burned out. And a couple of years ago, I've come to this conference now 3 or 4 times, and every time I've just been really energized and excited. The beginning, Suzanne said something in the introduction, I hope you find your people, hope you have a lot of fun. And I don't know why I was surprised about this, but that really sunk into me. And like sitting at these tables, going to these sessions, chatting with people in between, I was like, whoa, you guys are my people. And it's just really meant a lot. Obviously the organization is incredible, the details. So thanks to Aaron, Sam, Molly, Javi, Judy, Wes, Felicia, Emily, others. My only complaint is there wasn't enough food. Maybe we can like double that next time. Okay, no, joke obviously. Suzanne, thank you. My mentor, a mentor, I hope I can say that, a mentor, a hero of mine, and really doing the work here at Notre Dame since she's been here with the Institute, really doing the work of thinking about these questions of ethics, purpose, virtue, vocation, the common good, and just putting those into practice in a way that I think is really amazing. Okay, all right. Yeah, let's do this. All right. Oops, sorry. Wrong tab. Okay. Sorry. Okay. Sorry. Really? Yes. Yeah. I want to start with this quote that really strikes me from St. Thomas Aquinas. It says, "The essence of virtue consists in the good rather than in the difficult." And it strikes me for a lot of reasons. One is that I teach here at Notre Dame, and the students are just so impressive. My faculty colleagues are so impressive that you get a kind of contact high, right? And you think like, oh, I gotta be doing stuff all the time. I gotta make things. I gotta be impressive. And it's important to work hard and to do things and do meaningful projects. But I think I often forget that virtue, it's valuable, it's beautiful because it's good, not because it's difficult. I often forget that. I often think if something's hard, it's worth doing. If it's easy, it's like, I can do that when I retire. I can do that later. But virtue, the essence of virtue, consists in the good rather than in the difficult. I also have a quote from St. Aristotle. We can do that. It's Notre Dame. We can imagine. Plus, Father Bob is not here, so we work. Yeah, like Villanova has a poem. Okay, here we go. We work to have leisure on which happiness depends. We work to have leisure on which happiness depends. This quote from Aristotle is something that I start a class that I teach on the philosophy of work with, and it really is the theme for the entire class. Trying to help my students reorient the purpose of work into a well-lived life, to really think hard about the ways in which work is good. And I do think work is good. I think work is really good. I love working. I love work. But I think it's really important for us to realize that work is always aiming at something. And from the very beginning of the Western philosophical tradition, Aristotle kind of sets the tone by saying the thing that work aims at is leisure. So why is that important? I want to bookend the talk here with 2 poems from Wendell Berry. because I love Wendell Berry. The first one is Manifesto. So Wendell Berry wrote the Manifesto as part of the Mad Farmer sort of series of poems. It's a beautiful poem. It's another one that I read to my students, and I wanted to sort of help us kind of reorient around this idea that work aims at leisure. All right, here we go. Love the quick profit, the annual raise, vacation with pay, want more of everything ready-made. Be afraid to know your neighbors and to die, and you will have a window in your head. Not even your future will be a mystery anymore. Your mind will be punched in a card and shut away in a little drawer. When they want you to buy something, they will call you. When they want you to die for profit, they will let you know. So friends, every day, do something that won't compute. Love the Lord. Love the world. Work for nothing. Take all that you have and be poor. Love someone who does not deserve it. Denounce the government and embrace the flag. Hope to live in that free republic for which it stands. Give your approval to all that you cannot understand. Praise ignorance. For what man has not encountered, he has not destroyed. Invest in the millennium. Plant sequoias. Say that your main crop is the forest that you did not plant, and that you will not live to harvest. Say that the leaves are harvested when they've rotted into the mold. Call that profit. Prophesy such returns. Put your faith in the 2 inches of humus that will build under the trees every 1,000 years. Listen to carrion. Put your ear close and hear the faint chattering of the songs that are to come. Expect the end of the world and laugh. Laughter is immeasurable. Be joyful, though you've considered all the facts. So long as women do not go cheap for power, please women more than men. Go with your love to the fields. Lie easy in the shade, rest your head in her lap, swear allegiance to what is nighest your thoughts. As soon as the generals and the politicos can predict the motions of your mind, lose it. Leave it as a sign to mark the false trail, the way you didn't go. Be like the fox who makes more tracks than necessary, some in the wrong direction. Practice resurrection. Yeah, chills. I always get like a little teary-eyed. I'm gonna work through that. Here, I love this poem. We're gonna come back to Wendell Berry at the end, but I hope it sets the tone for the importance of getting out of some of these systems that we've been talking about here. We've talked about capitalism, we've talked about metrics, we've talked about incentives and promotion. And I just think through the kind of paradoxical reflection here, Wendell Berry, at least for me when I read this, just frees me up, like just gives me a space to breathe. I'm just like, oh, okay, reorients me. All right, so let me tell you a quick story. A few years ago, I found myself here at Notre Dame, 5:30 a.m. on a Saturday, and I was in my office, like on my laptop, and I was thinking, what am I doing? Like, what am I doing? What am I actually doing? Like I'm not an ER doctor, like I'm not saving lives. I'm not an investment banker, like nothing was on the line. I study and write about the good life and about integrating rest and leisure into your life. I took a picture actually, because I thought to myself, this is the lowest point. I was like, this is it. I never want to feel like this again. In short, as Augustine says, mihi quaestro factus sum. I have become a question to myself. And it was at that moment that I really started to appreciate all of the pressures that I see my students in classes going through. They're sort of driven, they have to go forward, they have to do something, but they don't always know why. And if you stop and ask about it, or if you stop and just have a moment to reflect, it can be terrifying, right? And I realized a lot of those pressures, a lot of those influences, some different, some the same as the students, like that's happening in me. I have to figure this out. And so I did what I always do when I have a big existential crisis. that I don't understand, I said, I'm gonna make a class about this. I'm gonna teach other people about this. I don't know. It's kind of worked sometimes. So that's what I did. I started a class called The Working Life, and it struck a chord. Immediately, I got emails from hundreds of students who were seniors, and they were desperate. They were like, I need to take this class. First of all, it counts for second philosophy requirement, so they're like, I just literally need that requirement. But importantly, they were also like, no, I need to take this class. I'm a senior, I'm graduating, and I need to figure these questions out. I need to figure out, what is work-life balance? What does it mean? Like, what's the importance of wealth? How should I use that? What is generosity? Like, I need to figure those things out. So I sent all these emails. I was like, oh, thank you so much. Like, here's some reading list, whatever. The class is full. And then they started showing up at my office. And it was kind of creepy. They were like, I need to. And I was just like, there was like a desperation there that I definitely identified with. After making this class, I actually then turned it into a program with some support from the Sheedy family, may their name be blessed, and my dean, turned it into a program where students who are studying business and liberal arts can come together and really ask these big sort of purpose-driven career discernment questions. We're reading Aristotle, we're reading the politics, the Nicomachean Ethics, we're reading contemporary philosophers like Byung-Chul Han, and we're asking these questions that really are existential for them. What is burnout? How do you avoid burnout? Why am I terrified every time I put my iPhone down and don't have something to do for a minute? And through that, we're helping them really discern the purpose and meaning of work and how to integrate it into their lives. Well, that's what I look like as a Barbie, by the way. I accidentally uploaded that photo to TikTok, and I was like, oh, I gotta make you guys look at that. All right, here we go. I'm gonna print out a copy for you, Craig. All right. I think this problem that I was encountering is a distinctively cultural problem. So John Maynard Keynes, in about 1931, gave a talk called The Economic Possibilities for Our Grandchildren. And in it, now keep in mind, like this is like 1930s, like we're in like the Great Depression, right? And capitalism is very much not seen as a vehicle for flourishing for society. People are looking at capitalism, they're looking at technological advances, and they're like, and then they're looking over at the Soviet Union. They're like, that looks like that's pretty good over there. And so Keynes is like, whoa, you guys, just wait, okay? Let me show you these sort of figures that I've done. He says, in the next 100 years, capital is going to compound. There's going to be 7.5 times of growth in the capital that's available in the United States. Technology is going to improve, and increased productivity will allow us to do what we're doing at a fourth of the effort. He says, mankind is presently solving its economic problem. Our new problem in 2030, in 100 years, will be finding meaningful ways to fill our time when we only need to work 10 to 15 hours per week. Yet it didn't happen. It says, in our lifetimes, we may be able to perform all the operations of agriculture, mining, and manufacture with a quarter of human effort to which we've been accustomed. All this means that we are solving the economic problem. So, this is one of my favorite quotes from it too. He says, 3 hours of work per day, that'll be enough to solve the old Adam in us who's like, just what am I going to do with all this time? He's like, oh yeah, we'll find things for you to do. Okay, how did it hold up? Well, on the one hand, the economic predictions were pretty spot on. In some ways, he actually underestimated the growth of GDP per capita. We actually had 10 times the growth in wealth. He predicted 7.5 times. What about hours worked per week? Not so good. So we're right here when he's writing it, and this is where we're at roughly right now. There's been a 4% gain in leisure, about 3.5 hours or 3.8 hours per week, and that's actually totally wiped out if you factor in non-paid labor, so work in the home, etc. Totally wiped out. We're actually working more than we were working then. There's a cottage industry amongst kind of like thought leaders or whatever that is, You're trying to figure out, right, why was Keynes so wrong? Like if you Google this, like Keynes prediction, there's a million articles out there, and they're all super fascinating, and certainly they're all getting at something that I think is probably true and important. But a lot of the explanations, I think, miss a crucial fact. So, for instance, in the Atlantic, we have the argument that wealth disparity has increased as just wealth in general and productivity has increased. And so now we're at a point where, 90% of the people really aren't in a position to be working only 15 hours a week. Some truth to that, absolutely. But if you look at people who are on like the bottom 30% of the economic ladder, the quality of life exceeds those who are on like the top 40% of the economic ladder in like 1930 and 40, right? Sorry, I'm a philosopher now. I'm like doing economics or something. Like somebody's in the back, like, wait, 40%, 30%. Okay, here we go. The point is, right? The average quality of life, even for those of us who are not like super rich, super wealthy, is like we're living like kings compared to what they were living like in the 30s and the 40s. We're living like kings, and yet we're still sort of addicted to work. As a Catholic, somebody at Notre Dame, I don't find this very surprising at all. So Joseph Pieper wrote in the 1960s, I believe, Leisure, the Basis of Culture. And his thesis there is that in modern Western society, we inhabit a world of total work. He says we've completely lost any true notion of leisure, or what he calls schole, right? Otium. These are the Greek and Latin words for leisure. Now, paraphrasing this argument, the philosopher Byung-Chul Han, one of my favorite contemporary philosophers, says this. He says, we increasingly resemble the sort of active people who roll as the stone rolls in obedience to the stupidity of the laws of mechanics. Because we look at life exclusively from the perspective of work and performance, we view inactivity as a deficiency that must be overcome as quickly as possible. Human existence is fully absorbed by activity, and thereby becomes exploitable. It says, today's society is no longer Foucault's disciplinary world of hospitals, madhouses, prisons, barracks, and factories. It has long been replaced by another regime, namely a society of fitness studios, office towers, banks, airports, shopping malls, and genetic laboratories. 21st century society is no longer a disciplinary society, but rather an achievement society. Its inhabitants are no longer obedient subjects, but achievement subjects. They are entrepreneurs of themselves. All right, so Pieper says, in order to win our way back to a genuine notion of leisure, we've got to confront the contradictions that arise from our overemphasis on work in the modern world. We've got to realize how exclusively the opposing idea of work has invaded and taken over the whole realm of human action and human existence as a whole. So, let's do it. Let's confront that contradiction, yeah? Okay, here we go. I characterize the sort of philosophical view that underpins this ideal as achievementism. This is what I call it in my classes for my students. I characterize it as the philosophical position that our purpose and value lies in continuous achievement, that self-worth equals status, that success is both the means to and the end of a well-lived life. Now, I don't think anybody consciously adopts achievementism. I don't like if you're talking to somebody, you're like, oh, I'm a virtue ethicist. What are you? They're like, oh, I'm an achievementist. I think, though, that if we look at our lives, if we look at the way that we actually organize our lives, where we put our time, where we put our effort, I think this better explains what we're doing than many other frameworks that we might explicitly articulate. Arthur Brooks, I think it was Arthur Brooks, maybe it was David Brooks, one of the Brooks brothers. They're not actually brothers. I just think that's such a good joke. Okay. Arthur, our friend Arthur, characterizes this in this really, really great article. I cite it in a lot of my classes. He characterizes this as a kind of addiction, right? Success addiction. He says, it's not a conventional medical addiction, but success certainly has addictive properties. And this resonates, certainly with my students, it resonates with me too. Like, I don't know about you guys, but like, sometimes like during the day I look at the Google Calendar and then like a meeting pops up with somebody that's like, ooh, like they're saying, and just like dopamine, like, yeah, you know? Or like you click submit on something and you're just like, you know? In ways that make you do things that really are not in your best interest. Like show up at 5:30 a.m. on a Saturday in an office and think like, what am I supposed to be doing right now? All right. I think this leads to a problem that I call the workification of everything. And I want to show you an example, if it will play. Let's see if it will play, of how this shows up in our culture. Nope, here we go. Nope, oh, there we go, all right. Oh, Liberty Mutual. This talk is brought to you by Adobe. Here we go. We might not have sound.
Do we have sound?
We do have sound? Hold, please. That's okay. I'll just do a voiceover. All right, here we go. So like imagine in the background, it's like really intense like EDM music. It's like that's the whole thing. Okay. There's really none of any words. Okay. Oh yes, wait.
It's on the other side.
Oh, I see. No, I don't see. I don't know. Okay, and then I click on this. There we go. Okay, ready? Yeah, I'll do that. So she sees her watch. It says bedtime. She's like, okay, yeah, go. Game face. Sorry, I don't know what I'm doing. I forgot you guys were here for a second. And then she wakes up. Sleep goal update. Boom. Meet your sleep goals. Yes. Just wear watch. Like there's no. Oops. Wabba-dabba-doo. We're stuck. There's no more like straightforward. Oh dear. There's no more straightforward message than that, right? Like Apple is so lazy. But like at first I'm like, oh yeah, iPod, think that. Now they're just like, just wear watch. And we're just like, okay, all right. We're trying to workify, we're trying to achieve sleep goals, right? You guys, that's insane. That's crazy. That's nuts. It's like my 4-year-old. Let's see, 4-year-old. Yes, the 4-year-old. Yes, Lydia. She's adorable. She's a biter, but she's getting over it. And my 4-year-old, she'll come into my bedroom after we put her to bed, and she'll be like, oh, I can't sleep. And I'm like, well, you know, just like go back to bed and just like lay down. She's like, no, I'm trying so hard. That's your problem right there. You cannot try harder to sleep. That's not the kind of thing that you do. And yet, this is sort of the message that we're getting, right? So we struggle with things like sleep. Achadia, or acedia, or acedia, or whatever, achadia is a vice, right? And typically, we associate this vice in contemporary culture with like sloth or like, you know, laziness, right? Inactivity, not doing something. But in its original context, especially like in the Middle Ages, it actually meant a restless anxiety in the face of stillness. So if you look at like the Benedictine rule, or if you look at these like rules of life in these monasteries, they'll describe monks who are suffering from achadia or the noonday demon as people who are like looking out the window and they're like, oh, maybe a beggar will come and I can like do something. Or like, oh, I can like work, you know, they just can't sit still, right? they're just restless in the face of stillness. I added this, by the way. Yes, so... like, I did add that, but like, how was that not meant to be there? Like, this is a picture from the 15th century. There's this beautiful hall with all these frescoes of like vice and virtue, and you got all these pictures. And like, I pulled it up and I'm like, oh, they're missing something. It's so perfect. Okay. All right. This resonates with my own experience. It resonates with my students' experience. In the working life class, I'll do an experiment where I say like, okay, everybody, put your phones like on the table. Now we're gonna go out and on campus. I just want you to find a place and just sit in stillness for 30 minutes. And then come back and we'll report back. It's very hippie, like I'm a very progressive teacher. And they come back and I ask them like, what was the experience like? And their first reaction is that it was terrifying. And this is 100% my experience as well, right? Like if I forget my phone at home and then I'm like waiting in a line, I'm just like, what am I doing? What do I do, right? They're terrified. But after that kind of initial sort of terror, they have this kind of like wave of relief, like you're finally like breathing, like sort of experience this stillness, this rest. And I don't think it's surprising that they're unable to stop achieving, even with such great classes here at Notre Dame that teach them about leisure, in part because I think even though I'm teaching this, I'm modeling something slightly different. This is my calendar the week that I that I taught about leisure in my class. And I was like, if you want to come to office hours, just grab time on my calendar. And I put it up there, and I realized it was such a humble brag, right? I was just like, yeah, like I'm just like so busy. And I find this in a lot of work cultures, even here at the university, right? People are constantly like, oh, I'm so busy. Like, how's your day going? What do you got planned today? Oh, meetings, like, we're just always talking about this. Like, what are we doing, you guys? All right. So I don't think it's any surprise that our students are having trouble getting out of this sort of cycle of achievement. And Keynes foresaw this. So here's a part of that speech. So the speech itself gets a lot of like people thinking about it, reporting on it, articles. They always take the first couple of paragraphs that I showed you a second ago. I've never seen anybody highlight this part of the speech. So he says, for many ages to come, the old Adam will be so strong in us that everybody will need to do some work if he's to be contented. But when the accumulation of wealth is no longer of high social importance, there will be a great change in the code of morals. I see us free, therefore, to return to some of those sure and certain principles of religion and traditional virtue, that avarice is vice, that the extraction of usury is a misdemeanor, and that love of money is detestable. But beware. The time for all of this is not yet. For at least another 100 years, we must pretend to ourselves and to everyone that fair is foul and foul is fair. For foul is useful and fair is not. Avarice and usury and precaution must be our gods for a little longer still. For only they can lead us out of this tunnel to economic necessity and into daylight. I get chills there too, but like in the bad way. I'm like, must be our gods for a little longer still. Now, interestingly, he puts this kind of key transition in culture in a passive voice. He says, when the accumulation of wealth is no longer of high social importance, there will be a great change in the code of morals. Why? Like, how? And this is where I think, as educators, for me as a philosopher, this is where I think the problem comes into the scope of what we're doing, right? Virtues and vocations. Virtues are the things that he's predicting, the things that we need, right? And he's saying it'll just happen, but without some sort of change, without some sort of effort, without some sort of education, we get sleep goals, All right. So, how should we reframe this? back to Pieper. It's such a like basic Catholic bro. Whatever. Back to Pieper. Here we go. Leisure and culture. Pieper says there's a crucial connection between leisure and culture. He defines leisure as a condition of the soul, a stillness that is necessary preparation for accepting reality. It says only the person who is still can hear. Whoever's not still cannot hear. Leisure is the disposition of receptive understanding, of contemplative beholding and immersion in the real. And he says this is connected up with culture, which is the good or goods, perhaps common good, that a society aims at through non-instrumental activity, rituals, artistic performance, characteristic artifacts like paintings, essays, statues. And Pieper's idea is that unless we recover this idea of leisure, we're not going to have the kind of culture that we think is worth celebrating. But I think that we can actually go from the opposite direction, right? I think that we can create a culture that allows for the conditions of true leisure to exist. And that's what I'm more interested in. I've tried like the leisure route. I've tried like just like doing this in my classes. I'm like, leisure! It's like, Pieper, like read it, leisure. Like, trying to like recover it. But what I've found is that it's far more effective to create the kind of community, create the kind of experiences and environment where people can experience that leisure. Because when you do, we love it, we know it. You put the iPhone down and you're like, or like you're in nature, like you're ever in nature. Nature? Whenever I go in nature, like I have this moment where like, at first I'm just kind of like walking and then all of a sudden I'm just surrounded by these trees and all this stuff and my brain just like unclenches, Like I didn't even know I was clenching my brain. I was just like, eh. And then like I'm in nature and I'm like, oh, right? I think if we create these environments, create this culture, then I think we'll be exposed to, we'll sort of understand, we'll see, we'll feel what leisure is. Why? Because I think experience and activity is more easily and more deeply understood. I think it's more intuitive, right? Manifestations of leisure in our cultural context, I think are going to be much different than the kinds of leisure that Pieper is envisioning, or that Aristotle envisioned, right? Aristotle was like, oh yes, I need to like watch the waves and figure out, contemplate reality and connect it with the spheres. Okay, if we start with these notions of leisure, I think we're going to have a lot of difficulty translating them to the contemporary context. If we start with culture, I think we'll have an intuitive grasp of it. So, I think if we want to build or change our culture in general, we need to move from theory to practice and then back again in a virtuous feedback loop. So, what do we not mean by leisure? So Pieper says the classical notion of leisure, Aristotle and Pieper are what I'm drawing on here. One is it's not mere relaxation, right? It goes beyond relaxation or recuperation. It's important to recover. Like if you're running, you need to like stop running at some point to recover, right? But leisure is not merely recovering. The way Pieper puts it, or I don't know, I'm kind of paraphrasing here, is that kind of capitulates to the logic of achievement, right? If you see leisure as just like recharging, like I'm an iPhone and it's like, oh, low on battery, and then I go home and I'm like, and I'm like, all right, boom, ready to go, right? Like that's not leisure. Like you're resting in order to work or achieve or do something, perform. So it's not mere relaxation. Not that relaxation's bad. Pieper thinks it's good. Aristotle has a part where he's like, yeah, like the life of, I forget what he says. He's talking about, the people are kind of like loafing around, hanging out, like Diogenes in the barrel or whatever. He's like, yeah, that's important, but like, it would be absurd to build a whole life around this idea of just like chilling, right? Instead, leisure is what we philosophers sometimes call atelic. It is purposeless, right? It's intrinsically valuable. It's something that we do for its own sake. It's not the sort of thing that you can rush through. It's not the sort of thing that has a structure of achievement. Like if you're walking in nature, and you're not like walking to like get the steps in or whatever, you're just like walking in nature, you can't like do it faster, right? Or better. You can't be like, I just enjoyed the awe-inspiring beauty the most. Like, that's crazy, right? Or like, I'm the best sleeper. Like, no, All right. also not amusement. So I think this is why I actually somewhat hate the term leisure. Like when we talk about leisure, like immediately what I think about is this. I'm like, yeah, like leisure, right? This is like in actual, the phrasing of this actual ad for whatever this is, the icon it sees. Explore, relax, repeat. Like, it's like, okay, that's a lot of pressure, man. Here's like one of their itineraries, like day 4. You are going to be so relaxed, and then you're gonna repeat it. You know, I look at that and I'm just like, I'm too tired. I can't achieve that much relaxation this week. It's more like, leisure is more like unstructured play. It's still not quite that, right? It's still not quite play. But if you look at kids playing, Byung-Chul Han makes this point too, if you look at kids playing, there's not really a point to what they're doing, right? It's totally pointless. There's like, like they're just, everything is just being made up as they go. And if you're like, what are you doing? Or if you're like, I want to show you how to do that better. Like, it doesn't make any sense. They're just like, oh, I'm a pirate. And you're like, nah, but what? Like, no purpose, right? It's just spontaneous. It's something that they're just doing for its own sake. The way that Pieper puts it is that leisure is a condition of the soul. He says it's a receptivity to reality. So here's a couple of quotes that I like from Pieper. And again, I said he defined leisure in that way a second ago. He doesn't define leisure at all. It's like very poetic. Like if you read this book, like 3/4 of it is about like Thomistic metaphysics of mind. Totally skip that part. And then, no, actually it's, well, maybe important, I don't know. And, but a lot of it is just like leisure, here's what it is. And it's just this poetic, beautiful description of what leisure is or could be. So here's a couple of those descriptions. He says, leisure is not the attitude of mind of those who actively intervene, but of those who are open to everything. Not those who grab and grab hold of, but of those who leave the reins loose and are free and easy themselves, almost like a man falling asleep. For one can only fall asleep by letting oneself go. Leisure is a form of silence, of that silence which is the prerequisite of the apprehension of reality. Only the silent can hear. Those who do not remain silent do not hear. Last one. Sleeplessness and the incapacity for leisure are related to each other in a special sense. And a man at leisure is not unlike a man at sleep. It is in these silent and receptive moments that the soul of man is sometimes visited by an awareness of what holds the world together. I just love these. We can just like keep doing this. I actually did make a handout for my students of all these different things. And then we go to the Racklin Museum. And I'm like, all right, we're just gonna we just sit in a dark room. It's not weird. It sounds weird when I say it out loud. It's not weird. And we just like meditate on these different sort of axioms from Pieper. It's wonderful. All right. So from my tradition, from the Catholic tradition, leisure is something that's rooted in contemplation, celebration, in Leisure on the Basis of Culture. He's constantly talking about festivals, which I love. Like, I love the idea of a festival. Like, we don't even have festivals anymore. We have, like, parties, you know? And parties, like, have a point. They have a structure. They have a purpose. Like, you're achieving fun, right? You're just like, yeah, you know? And festival is just, like, this idea of just, like, you know, festivity, celebration. It's got a contemplative feel to it. Ultimately, Pieper connects this up with worship, right? And that, honestly, like, there's, like it accelerates toward the end. He's like, yes, leisure, it's silence, it's stillness, it's contemplation, it's apprehension of reality. It's being visited by what holds the world together. It's festival, it's ritual, it's worship. And you're just like, what? Wait a second. Like, there was like a lot of moves there, buddy. Okay. But it's something that's connected with this ideal of the liberal arts, something we've been talking about for the last couple of days. Something that needs to be embodied in a culture, something that we can't just learn and then do. So how do we create a culture of genuine leisure? This is what I call the new Benedict option. That reference is going to be lost on everybody. Okay, whatever. Imagine a work culture that fosters leisure. This was really Benedict, St. Benedict's, one of St. Benedict's major contributions to Western thought. He had this ideal of ora et labora, work and play, right? Work is going to be fit and integrated fully into a life by creating a community where we're all oriented to the same thing, right? You don't see monks, you don't see Benedictine monks. Like search for a CV of a Benedictine monk. Like that'd be, if you could find one, I'd give you $10. Yeah. Actually, Suzanne will give you $10. $10. There's no CVs. They don't have CVs, right? That's not what they're doing in the monastery. What would it look like if we allowed for genuine leisure, if we recognized that there are different seasons, right? Seasons for working, seasons for harvesting. And what if we built work and set our goals around this ideal? That we're whole people with entire lives, and that we need to integrate these things. Now, I'm not suggesting that we just add leisure to our to-do list. Obviously, like that's counterproductive. I did actually, one of my pedagogical mistakes a couple of years ago is I was like, all right, your assignment this week is like build in a half hour of leisure, 2 days, and then come back and report on it. And I was like, oh, what did I do? That's an impossible assignment. It's a paradox. They're like, I did it, but I couldn't do it. Yeah, all right. Fair enough. You get an A. Yes, it was a test. How do we do it? And I think this is a special challenge for us, in part because we don't live in monasteries, and most of us, well, I certainly can't. I'm 5 kids in. We can't live in monasteries. They're not monasteries. So how do we actually do it in the contemporary world? One idea, and I'm stealing this from Abraham Joshua Heschel, reference here in a second, but wrote this beautiful book called The Sabbath, is thinking about time as a kind of architecture, and thinking about architecting our time in particular ways. So in the simplest form, this is what we do when we use our planners, right? Or our Google calendars, or whatever. We're architecting them. We're creating a structure, and as we do that, I think we want to think hard about the different kinds of buildings that we're putting into that landscape. Some are functional, some are utilitarian, some are beautiful, some are awe-inspiring, and some are just there for the purpose of giving us this kind of space. Think about the difference between, say, my Google Calendar, represented by this guy over here. What? Oh yeah, here we go. Sorry, okay. I can't. Think about the difference between the Google Calendar and what it would look like if we thought about our planners more in the style of this beautiful sort of classical architecture. Here are a few quotes from Heschel, and again, I recommend this book highly. I love this book. He says, "The Sabbath is a realm of time where the goal is not to have, but to be. Not to own, but to give. Not to control, but to share. Not to subdue, but to be in accord. Life goes wrong when the control of space, the acquisition of things of space, becomes our sole concern." He connects it up with this idea of festivity. He says, "Sanctify the Sabbath by choice meals, beautiful garments. Delight your soul with pleasure, and I will reward you for this pleasure. The Sabbath is to time what the temple and tabernacle are to space. The Sabbath is a cathedral in time. On the 7th day, we experience in time what the tabernacle and temple represent as spaces, which is eternal life, God in the complete creation." I think we can also continue to recognize, and I don't want to say capitalize on, but sort of build on the kind of rituals that are available within our tradition. It's a beautiful picture of the Notre Dame Basilica. I believe this is on Easter, the Easter Vigil. Sometimes I get that feeling, that kind of like leisure feeling when I'm in these rituals. Not now, not like in the past 8 years. My kids are 8, 6, 4, 2, 0, and it's war, man. It's like All Quiet on the Western Front. You're like, you get that one! But sometimes, someday in the future, I think we can use these things and really see them as festivals, right? Festivities, ways of creating rhythm within our lives. When my students ask me what work-life balance looks like, I sometimes jokingly put this picture on my slides. This is the schedule of the monks at New Mellery Abbey. And if you look at it, they're spending time working, but like look at how much time they're spending working. It's like, okay, 4:15, wake up. All right, then we pray a little bit, okay? And then prayer, okay? And then we got a little bit more prayer. Okay, and then we got to pray. And then we got prayer, some more prayer. Okay, now work for like a couple of hours. And then it's like, all right, now let's eat. Prayer, prayer, a little bit of work, prayer, retire. Okay. Now, obviously, this isn't like the ideal, depending on your tradition, old, whatever, your sort of view of the good life. But look at how they built this in. If you look, there's a wonderful documentary on YouTube. They just put it on YouTube of this particular abbey. And I love it in part because it's not one of these like famous like monasteries, or it's not this beautiful, it's just in Iowa. Like it's just like a bunch of dudes in Iowa like making coffins and praying. And if you look at it, there's two scenes in particular that I want to bring up. One is they have this guy. He's like the title on the documentary says their business manager. He's the business manager of this monastery, and you can just tell that this guy hates his life because they're like interviewing him, and they're like, "What's it like to be the business manager of this monastery?" He's like, "Well, look." During the pandemic, when demand for coffins, sadly, like that, he's like, these guys started giving them away. And he's like, I don't really know what I'm doing here. Like, he's just a project manager, right? They're like not interested in maximizing anything. The other scene that I think is fascinating is, these monks are actually master carpenters. Like they've mastered this practice, this craft, and they're doing this interview with this guy, and he's like, whatever. And then the bell rings and it's time for prayer, and they're showing him the B-roll, whatever, and then they interview him later and they say, hey, what happens if you're doing the thing and you're just like, oh, I'm just about done, oh, I want to do this thing, and the bell rings, and he's like, what do you mean what happens? Like, I put down the tools and I go pray. Like, there's just no question in his mind. It's like, it's so oriented towards this other good, this other value, and he just sees that work as instrumentally and intrinsically to some extent valuable, right? It's enjoyable. He's clearly in a flow state. And he actually says the reason that he loves doing carpentry is he's like, it really doesn't take a lot of your mind. And so once you master it, he's like, I can just say Hail Marys. I'm like, dude, how many Hail Marys can you be in a day? I'm lucky if I get 4. It's like a good day. All right. Another way of thinking about this, and one way that I encourage my students to think about it, is by creating a kind of rule of life. This is a sort of antiquated, interesting one. I love it. It's by this Dominican. He wrote this small book called The Intellectual Life. It's really popular amongst certain rad shreds on Twitter. But I love it because he gets so practical. If you read something like this, or if you read Benedict's Rule of Life, it doesn't read like some of these productivity books, or even a Cal Newport, which I love Cal Newport. But he's like, look, deep work, here's what you do, and here's how you structure it, and here's how you time block, and all these kind of things. If you're looking at The Intellectual Life, Search or Launch is first rule, don't read too much. He's like, if you're thinking about something, only read 1 or 2 things that you know is good. That's it. He's like, secondly, you've got to, have all this time for prayer and whatever else. And then he says, really, to live an intellectual life, it's a privilege, it absolutely is. But he's like, all you need is 2 hours a day. It's that's all the work I put into it, right? So I encourage my students to think about this, right? Create kind of a guide, a rule of life, a manual that allows you to sort of determine and distribute where you're putting your effort, your work, how you're spending your time, rather than just reacting like I do, where I'm just like, Craig, let's put it on the Google Calendar. Or just you see something pop up on the Google Calendar, that is just the worst. You're just I have to do that now. And you're just walk from place to place. Sort of take control of that, right? Build something like this, some structure like this around your values. One other story about a monastery. So I think this is 2019. The monks of the Abbey of the Green Chartreuse, or the Monastery of the Green Chartreuse, they're the ones that produce this liquor, green chartreuse. I don't know if you've had it. It's it's like in New York, they make all these fancy cocktails with green chartreuse. And in 2019, demand for it just exploded. Like the whole world, everybody was like, oh, we gotta get this green chartreuse. And so like these orders were coming in, and the monks, they released a statement, and they actually released it on Twitter. Well, they didn't. They wrote it in the scroll and handed it. Whatever. They went to Jack Dorsey and it's like, all right, okay, I'll type this up. And the statement was really simple. It was like, okay, demand for this liquor has never been, higher, and we're really just kind of bummed because we can't trade as much as we want to. They're like, so we're just going to focus on regional markets. And immediately the price went poof, you could go to the corner liquor store. It was $400 for a bottle of green chartreuse. But they were able to do that because their communal life, their culture, was built around something other than productivity or profit or whatever it was. Their whole life was grounded in this culture that they endorsed, that they saw, that they sort of had some sort of agency over. One other story about these guys. They're the people that are, they're the monks that were featured in that film Into Great Silence a while ago. You guys remember that movie? It was just got Oscar buzz and stuff. The whole movie, there's no talking in it because they don't talk. They just I think they have one day every 4 years where they can say hi. So the whole movie, no words, just following them around the abbey. The filmmaker originally contacted them. He's like, hey, I want to do this documentary. I think it would be really good. This is a beautiful location. Can I do this? And he never heard back. And so 2 or 3 years later, he's like, that's a bummer. Went on with his career, made a bunch of other things. And then 10 years later, he thought of it. And he's like, oh, I'm bummed I never made that. So I'm like, okay, whatever. 5 years later, they wrote back and they're like, we thought about it. Yes. 15 years. It was 15 years. That they had to just they're like, we just have to have a conversation about it. 15 years later, they're like, yeah, all right. Just striking to me how outside of the time frames, the sort of pressures, the whatever, how outside of that they are, right? They're a monastery in the sense of not just physically having this space devoted to the sacred whatever, the practice of life, the sort of way of life they have, but they're just totally outside, even the way that I think about organizing my time, or putting something on my calendar. Okay. This also, by the way, and this is something, I don't know, this is something that my students often ask about. This actually reflects, I think, more accurately a Catholic perspective on work than the one that we typically think of. Aquinas writes about work. He only writes about it with respect to the religious life. With a lot of things in the Summa, right, he's asking one question, but he has to frame it in a different way. And so he asks this question about manual labor. And he says, are religious bound to manual labor? In a sense, he's asking a question that Aristotle asked, which was, is there any value in manual labor, such that someone who is living the ideal good life would engage in it? And Aristotle's answer is no, right? Manual labor is degrading for the mind, it's degrading for the body. It keeps you from contemplating or forming the virtues that allow for contemplation. So for the longest time, manual labor in the Western philosophical tradition was ugh, that's the worst, we don't want to do that. But Aquinas says, look, manual labor is directed at different things. Obviously, you need to eat, survival. Also, the formation of virtue, keeping us sort of busy from idleness, right? Curbing concupiscence and almsgiving and charity, ultimately charity. So Aquinas says, yeah, absolutely. This kind of work is good, right? It's instrumentally good in the same way that, investment banking or being a professor or anything else is instrumentally good, but it's good. It can help us discipline the body, the mind, and the soul. He also asked this question of whether in the Garden of Eden, Adam and Eve worked, right? And again, it's an indirect way of asking, is work just suffering and toil? Is it something that's purely the result of the fall? Because that's, at least for my students, what they come in thinking the Catholic view is, right? Because there is that dramatic scene where God's oh, life's gonna suck. You ate the apple, and now you gotta work, you gotta sweat a lot, you gotta have babies, that's gonna hurt. It's just work is bad, right? But Aquinas says, God placed man in paradise that he might work in man and keep him, sanctifying him. For if this work were to cease, man at once would relapse into darkness. So this work, being placed in paradise, and this work that God's doing, keeps us from corruption and evil. Secondly, that man might dress and keep paradise, which dressing would not have involved labor, so he's distinguishing here between work and labor, as it did after sin, but would have been pleasant on account of man's practical knowledge of the powers of nature. So Aquinas' answer to this question of whether work is good, whether work is bad, whether it's good for us, is like, you guys, they were gardening. They were landscaping, right? Now, it didn't involve labor, the sort of toilsome, pointless, Camus, Myth of Sisyphus style activity, suffering, but there is a kind of work, that is good, right? Intrinsically good. I also point out, when I talk about this with my students, that in the story of Genesis, there's actually 3 points at which work shows up. There's the sort of scene in the garden, as Aquinas is kind of expounding upon here, where they're landscaping, they're like, gardening, hanging out. Then there's the intense scene where you're like, now you gotta work, okay. But before that, there's the work of creation, right? There's God creating the world. And if we think of the work in the garden as kind of an extension of that, like a co-creation, then work from the beginning is good. It's just a matter of integrating it in the right way into life. Okay, so how can we reclaim leisure in our lives, reintegrate non-instrumental or atelic activities? First thing that I recommend is doing stuff that we're bad at, things that we're not doing in order to achieve, like painting. Like, I'm really bad at painting, or drawing. I'm terrible at drawing. Like, I have no delusions that my drawings will lead to anything. And so I'm totally free to just draw for its own sake, right? Just do something that I'm not trying to be the best at. Engage in these kind of atelic activities, activities that you can't rush through, that you can't achieve or accomplish. This is from Byung-Chul Han again. He says, we owe true happiness to the useless and the purposeless, to what is intentionally convoluted, what is unproductive, indirect, exuberant, superfluous, to beautiful forms and gestures that have no use and that serve no purpose. Unlike walking to a destination or running somewhere or marching, taking a leisurely stroll is a luxury. Ceremonious inactivity means that we do something, but to no end. This to no end, this freedom from purpose and usefulness, is the essence, the core of inactivity. It's the basic formula for happiness. Pieper quotes Goethe, whatever. I'm smart. All right. Who says, I've never been bothered or asked in what way I was useful to society. I contented myself with expressing what I recognized as good and true. This has certainly been useful in a wide circle, but that was not my aim. It was the necessary result. Han also has this phrase that I love. So Pieper says, leisure is being open to everything, the necessary stillness for the apprehension of reality. Byung-Chul Han has this phrase. He says, the person who understands true leisure and inactivity wastes time on everything. Love that. It doesn't kill time or whatever, just wastes time on everything. Just so luxurious. Also, cultivating spiritual disciplines, contemplation, practices of stillness, silence, receptivity. In the class that I teach a whole unit on these obstacles. Things like status anxiety, this kind of achievement culture, the sort of economy of addiction and attention. There's a lot of obstacles, and I think we need to articulate those and think really hard about how we want to confront those. I also think that we should express more pity for achievementism, right? Like, I don't know, I'm Catholic, so I think, we should bring back Sheedy. But, no. Well, kind of. I think, look, when I talk to people, and, when I catch myself, I do this all the time. I'm like, oh, I'm so busy. That's, the humble brag. When I talk to people, and they're like, oh, I'm so busy, I just started saying, oh, I'm so sorry. It's no, I'm really busy. You're just, I hope that ends soon. Just like changing the way that we think about those things.
Can you hear me? So I love your lecture, and I hate long question people, but I'm going to be one because I just can't. So I teach a cousin of your class, and there's a knot that I haven't been able to untangle, that I haven't seen it untangled in your comments today. So I just want to talk it out with you. I used to show, when I would show the New Melleray monk schedule, to make my students and make sense of it, I would show an Olympic ice skater schedule. Until one day, like, I looked up from my PowerPoint and I saw like the scholarship athlete, the nursing student who just came back from a 12-hour clinical, and I realized, like, wait, I don't need to introduce you to crazy schedules. But the crazy schedule is the shadow virtue, right? It's the vicious, it's the vice, it's the shadow virtue of the New Melleray schedule. I don't actually say that to them, but it's true, and the whole class is about moving from one kind of schedule to the other. Now here's my question. You talked about not scheduling leisure, because that's crazy, the assignment, but there's a way in which I have kind of resolved to encourage my students to put it in the schedule, even if it's the vicious schedule. Like, what else can they do to actually start to inculcate those practices? And for us too, like, my own schedule's vicious. I agree, 100% we're modeling the wrong thing. And yet, like, to move from one kind of the vicious schedule to the virtuous schedule, what are the pathways that we can offer other than scheduling differently? See what I mean?
Totally. Yeah, I think that's great. And I think, I use like the Google Calendar strategy, especially because like we're a Google Calendar school. And so people literally can just like take your time and just be like, boom, like this is a thing you have to do now. So I do use the strategy of just like the OOO, like if you put OOO in the thing out of office, and then it just like deflects like any like attempt to put a thing on there. So I'll use that and I'll like put, okay, this is just like whatever time. So I don't think it's just that in particular. Like, I don't think that in particular is like problematic. I do think though that our students are kind of in a mindset of, if you're going to schedule something in, even if it's like self-care or if it's like meditation, there's still a way in which they're trying to like fit that in as like a to-do. And so one thing that I do beyond the kind of scheduling and encouraging them to kind of block out their time in certain ways is I try to create environments that take them out of that, like on their own. So with the Sheedy program, for instance, every month we have our students dialogue for 2.5 hours, and there's no tech, and a speaker comes and gives a talk for about 10 minutes on a big question that they faced in their life that the humanities broadly has somehow like helped shed light on. So they talk for 10 minutes, we give them food, and they just sit around tables just like this. We train them the mode of dialogue so that they know how to kind of structure deep conversation, but also get around like the weirdness and the norms that kind of make it hard to be vulnerable. And so every month we have them for 2.5 hours do that. It's really like 3 hours with like the before and after time. And I'll say that's one of the hardest things, like getting that, getting students to understand that that is an essential part of the program and community. Partly because it's not exactly the way that we recruit them in, right? We're like, oh yeah, look, selective program. You got to do like a certain amount of like, this is prestigious, whatever. But when they come in, our students here are so overcommitted. They're just so, they try to do absolutely everything, and they've got so many overlapping commitments that they're constantly like, okay, if I just get all the opportunities in this bucket and then I like spend this time here and I can get an excuse from there, like that kind of thing. We just have this conversation with them that's evolved over the 3 years. Where at first we were like, look, if you're in the program, here's how we're investing in you. Here's what you're going to get. You're only going to get out of this program, what you want to, the kind of transformative experience, if you put the time in and effort, whatever. And then that year, they're like, yes, we were at the retreat. They're like, great, we understand. And then the first dinner comes up and they're like, oh, sorry, I have skiing practice and this and that. And like, okay. So the second year we were like, look, we're going to make it, we're making a contract. And we're gonna actually scale back a lot of the programming. We're not gonna try to get you to like every lecture that we put on or like every workshop for career development or whatever. Because some of that, like our goal in getting them there was really just because like, well, we're doing the program, like we want them here. And like, okay, it's not serving them. So we're gonna scale back to just the essentials. And you're gonna commit, like you have to be at all these things. Now, anything that would excuse you from a class will excuse you from this, but like, you've gotta do it, you have to do it. And if you can't do it, we do a lot of discerning with them before they join the program. If you can't do it, totally fine, but give that spot to somebody who can commit to this. And so it's kind of paternalistic, but it's like, we are going to, and they're not used to this because so many of these opportunities, like they can sort of half commit to it, and the people are like, oh yeah, you can do this and whatever. They're not used to this, but we sort of capture time and space on their schedule, and then give it back to them in the form of this kind of contemplative dialogue. And I'll say after the first 6 months or the first year, there's no sort of, even early on, but at the end of that year, like if during the contract phase they're like, I don't know, like this sounds like, why would I put this in? By the end of that year, the students, especially with the model of the older students that have been in that program, completely appreciate and understand. And we'll even start to model other parts of their life after this. Like I asked one of the students this year, I was like, hey, do you want to be on the leadership team this next year? And she's like, at the beginning of the semester, I would have said yes, because I want to do everything. But like going through the year with the program and the class and everything, she's like, I actually want a little bit more time just to like read in my dorm. And I was like, win. I was like, right answer. It was a trick question. You won. Like A+, So I think it's like that kind of formative element, and I do think it requires a bit of a heavy hand. I think, at least here, we're really used to trying to like entice students and like, they have so many opportunities that we're like, oh, you'll get this and that, and like this connection, that network, whatever. I really do think we're doing them a favor, at least here, when we kind of heavy-handedly say like, we're gonna give you an excuse that you can give to any other sort of activity that's like, I'm sorry, this is like absolutely required of me. And it's understandable because it's kind of an honors program, like whatever, like people get that. But we're just building that in to your lives for you.
I think I have the microphone.
Yeah, nice.
This was great. Thank you. Well done. When you were talking about achievementism, I found my mind turning repeatedly to a thesis advanced by the late anthropologist David Graeber.
Oh yeah.
You know what I'm going to say. Apologies for the language. He wrote a book titled Bullshit Jobs.
It's a technical philosophical.
Yeah, right, exactly. Whose thesis is that some non-trivial percentage of the workforce actually is only working 10 hours a week. And the rest of the time they spend in their offices, they're, scrolling on Facebook or refreshing their email or whatever, And to me, I thought about it because it seems to me that if that's a real thing, in a way it might be the most pernicious manifestation of what you're describing as achievementism. That, it's one thing to be a high-powered professional and work too much for what you take to be good ends, but there's something deeply dispiriting about the idea that someone would feel compelled to pretend to work 40 hours a week.
Yeah.
So anyway, my question, I guess, is do you think that's a real thing? And if so, how does it figure into your thesis about achievementism?
Yeah. I teach the Bullshit Jobs book in the class, and I love it. I love the idea. The students really, it really resonates with them. I disagree with a lot of the big picture sort of theses that he's offering, even like his methodology. He's a great philosopher, but then he tries to do data and stuff. I'm like, I don't know about that guy. At the end you read his methodology as he's like, I set up an email account and received 123 emails. And you're like, well, okay, all right, whatever. Sorry, I don't know social science, maybe that's great. All right, so here's what I think. I agree 100%. I think that the thing that I think is most interesting philosophically about the idea is that if you look for bullshit jobs in your own experience, or you ask your students to look for these experiences, few of them have entire jobs that are bullshit. Same for me. I think definitely my entire job's not bullshit. But a lot of aspects of those jobs do involve a lot of bullshit, where the point is you're doing something that you know has no value, no use, and yet you are compelled to pretend like it does. And so I think back to a conversation I had with a student who was going into investment banking, really worried, and I should say I'm not anti-investment banking, a lot of my students are going into this, but I want them to have clear eyes when they're going in and understand it. I was talking to him about his internship experience, and the way he described it was like 10 hours of the day, you're just sitting like in a cubicle, waiting for like the panicked email at 11 p.m. after you've gone home that like we need the slide deck by like 5 a.m. And then like all of a sudden you're working, but you also have to be in the office that whole time. And if you're just like going like this, like you're not like performing the kind of thing that will get you a return offer. And so like can you think of anything more exhausting than like scrolling on Facebook, but like having like the deck up or the what, like just this like what are we? So I ask like what virtue are we, or what habit are we like imparting there or educating them for there? And I see this in my own life, like with the kind of busyness, like the culture of busyness. There is like you're signaling something, like I'm important, I'm valuable, like this is real, like we're doing important stuff or whatever. So there's something there, there's some like incentive to perform this busyness and to make yourself into the kind of person who is just like always ready, always available, always just like at any point can do the thing. And I think I don't know, I think that's just often a profound failure of imagination on the part of whoever's organizing or structuring that work. Again, like this student had great experience, like loved doing the things he was doing when he was able to do the real things. But you just don't need this whole sort of performance of success and achievement. I do think that's, in sort of institutions, bureaucracies, I do think that's a huge part of the job. It's just like performing value or something, you know.
Last question.
Hi.
Jennifer, can you hear me?
Mm-hmm.
Good. So I love this critique of accountability culture, and I love the classes that you're teaching. So I'm really into this on the practical side, and I want to ask you a theory question.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm worried about the characterization of leisure at times as, it seems like it's almost a suspension of time, or you want to cast it as outside activity in a kind of way. And I feel like what we want to have in the space of thinking about virtue is kind of integrate it, to think of it as a reorienting of how we make sense of activity. I mean, what the monks are doing is a kind of activity, contemplation. It's not atelic, it contains its own end, right? Yeah. So there's a kind of stillness, a way of being that the end is built into the nature of the thing that it is, and we human beings fulfilling our nature are in pursuit of and integrate it, right? So the space of stillness is a space of unity. It's not the space of anti-activity. I'm just wondering what you think about that.
I just agree totally. I think my favorite thing about Byung-Chul Han and his talk about like inactivity and like escaping the logic of achievement and all this kind of stuff, uselessness and purposelessness and atelic. The thing I love about that is that it at least intuitively makes plausible this idea that there's a kind of activity that I don't often conceptualize as possible for me, right? So I ask my students, I'll often ask them, like, do you ever engage in leisure? Like at the beginning of, leisure. They're like, yeah, totally. Like, every Thursday, like my friends and I like just sit and watch Netflix for 4 hours or whatever, or like play video games. And then it's sometimes hard to move from, okay, but like that's like a rest, recuperation, relaxation, to this idea of this other thing, this other leisure. So it's really, I think you're right, it's like an intentional action problem. It's like a framing problem. And what I like about the sort of provocative language of inactivity is that it kind of shocks us into thinking like, and into recognizing that there's a kind of activity outside like the means and sort of achievement telic structure. And once you get there, then it's just like this super rich sort of space of possible activities. And that's where, and we talk about this in the class, okay, what is it for like an activity to contain its end in itself, and contemplation and ritual and worship. But I do think that there's a step between our sort of ingrained, embodied understanding of leisure as in conceptual terms that kind of capitulate to the logic of achievement. I didn't think there's a step between that and then contemplation or worship or whatever it might be. And whenever I've tried to just like jump from there to there, I just find myself saying things that I just don't think my students could believe. Like, you know what I mean? Like, it's like, well, yeah, like, you know, contemplation. Like, and then I'll even ask, like, wait, what do you mean contemplation? And I have touchstones and things like that. But for many of them, like, they just don't even have those touchstones, right? Or if they've had them, they've conceptualized them in the way that capitulates to the achievement logic. So that's where I like the kind of provocative, like, oh, this is like, yeah, it's purposeless. It's useless. Why would you ever do something for no purpose? That's totally useless. You can kind of get yourself out of the conceptual framework of the logic of achievement, and then we sort of build like a richer, more robust sort of space. And that's where we end the class with really just an exploration of contemplation in its many forms. And students start to articulate what contemplation could be in a way that I think if we didn't have that middle step, they wouldn't be able to do. They'd be like, oh yeah, it's using the calm app. Or it's like, you know, headspace, I do headspace. Yoga, I do yoga. It's like all of those things, like kind of, mindfulness, meditation, yoga, whatever, could be, but they're also all things that you can do, even contemplation, religious prayer. Like you can, I mean, I'm Catholic now, I'm like, you know what I mean? Like that's, you can do prayer like in the logic of achievement. And so once we like hit that spot and really just like break out of this whole conceptual framework, then I feel like we're kind of building the fundamental sort of schema that we need to actually enact some sort of form of genuine leisure. But yeah, conceptually, theoretically, I think I just totally agree.